Which is more important, marrying for love or marrying for status? Nowadays, most people marry for love. But it wasn't always like this. Let's take a look at how it was back in the day, during the time of Taming of the Shrew by William Shakespeare and The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde.
But before we jump into the details, let's briefly review each of the plays. The Taming of the Shrew takes place in 16th century Italy, where two daughters are going to be married. The elder, Kate, is undesirable, while the younger daughter, Bianca, is the ideal maiden. However, they change once they are married. On the other hand, the importance of being earnest takes place in 19th century England. In the play, the characters use dishonesty and lies to gain the approval of the person they love. In both plays, the women want to and end up being courted. However, the women in The Importance of Being Earnest want to marry out of love, unlike the women in The Taming of the Shrew, who marry out of necessity and societal expectation.
Now that we know what the plays are about, let's take a look at the Elizabethan and Victorian views of romance.
During Shakespeare's era, the Elizabethan era, children were viewed as the property of their parents. Their parents made almost all of the decisions during their early lives for them, including marriage. Marriages were typically arranged by the families of the bride and groom and served as alliances between families with similar status. The bride and groom have little to no say in their marriage. During the time period of the taming of the shrew, woman's main role were to be married. Because of that, Kate hates her sister Bianca because people gravitate towards her, while Kate is unable to attract a single suitor. Kate's actions are motivated by her desire to be an acceptable bride, going even as far as trying to learn how to play the flute despite her short tempered and lack of natural gift. On the other hand, the female characters in The Importance of Being Earnest are motivated by their desires, which causes trouble, rather than what their family wants. During Wilde's time, when The Importance of Being Earnest takes place, marriage was seen as a method of gaining social status. This is portrayed when Aunt Augusta is deciding who can marry who based on their wealth. Typically, women from higher classes were married with the thought of becoming mothers who helped around the house. Activities or lifestyle choices that would make them less desirable for marriage, like higher education or sports, were frowned upon. At the time, romance was becoming increasingly popular between both men and women, and it was made easier when sending letters became popular. These letters were a vital part of romance during this time period, allowing lovers to communicate when they were apart. Wilde mocks this tradition when Cicely sends love letters to herself, portraying single women as crazy and odd.
Now that we've explored how romance was like back then, let's take a look at how Shakespeare and Wilde put their spin on it.
Shakespeare and Wilde portray courtship and idealization of marriage in a similar light, but not identically. There are several key commonalities and differences between the two. Let's take a look at what these plays have in common in terms of their portrayal and courtship and idealization of marriage. The first way Wilde mocks courtship is by the fact that both
But you don't need
Gwendolen
to
and
say you could
Cicely are
love me
obsessed
if
with
my
the
name
name
wasn't
Ernest
Ernest.
and wouldn't consider marrying someone with a different name.
But suppose it was something else. I think, for instance, Jack is a charming name.
Jack? No, there's not much music in the name Jack. The only real safe name is Ernest.
Courtship is a serious matter, especially during that time period, determining how the rest of one's life would play out. And Wilde makes a joke out of it as if the only important part about a partner is their name, and when in reality it is far from it. Similarly, Shakespeare mocks courtship when Bianca finds her own partner. In the Elizabethan era, women had no say in marriage, which was left up to the father of the bride. Shakespeare mocks this concept as the shrew, Kate, follows her father's instructions and marries the man of his choosing, while the ideal maiden, Bianca, goes behind her father's back and falls in love with Lucentio, which is against society's expectations. Wilde also mocks courtship in the scene where Cicely meets Algernon. She shows him a box of letters and tells him that the letters are his. He protests that he never wrote such letters, to which she responds, I was forced to write your letters for you. This indicates that she created an entire fake relationship with him in her head, writing letters to herself, pretending they were from him. Another example of Shakespeare mocking the idealization of marriage is when Petruchio fails to show at his own wedding. Weddings and marriages are typically serious, and Shakespeare is making a joke of them. When Petruchio appears, he argues, To me she's married, not unto my clothes. Someone who is taking their marriage seriously would never make such statements and would take pride in how they dress for their wedding. Although love is important, it does not encapsulate one's entire life. After learning that the women they are engaged to are not fond of their real names, which they have kept secret, the men in the importance of being earnest decide to get baptized in order to be with them. They are willing to change their identity as a result of love. In Algeron's case, he barely knows who Sicily is, which makes it even more comical. Not only does Shakespeare ridicule courtship, but he also pokes fun at marriage with the way Petruchio treats Kate throughout their marriage. To tame Kate, Petruchio throws her food on the ground to make her understand the rules of the game he is playing. His goal is to turn her from a shrew to an exemplary wife. However, his methods are very questionable. Petruchio also forces
I
Kate to
can't
go to
assure you,
sleep
sir.
in the
There's
middle
only
of the
two.
day, removing the chance of eating food and dismantling her sense of time. Would you
It should
treat
be
your
o'clock on
newlywed wife like
Saturdays.
this? In the importance of being earnest, the women have some control over who they marry. They both find a man they love and then approach their parents with the proposition of marriage. For example, once Gwendolyn has accepted Jack's proposal, she goes to her mother for approval. Although she needs approval, she is the one who chooses her husband. It is not done for her. On the contrary, in the Taming of the Shrew, the women do not get to choose who they marry. It is entirely up to their father Baptista. Bianca is able to choose who she marries because she goes behind her father's back and finds her own match. Another interesting difference between the different portrayals of courtship is how the women react to other women getting engaged or married in each of the plays, which is reflective of the times the plays take place. In The Importance of Being Earnest, Gwendolyn and Cicely end up happy for each other when their engagements are finalized. Although they are upset after the mix-up, believing they are both engaged to Ernest, they become fast friends and are happy when the other becomes truly engaged. However, in The Taming of the Shrew, Kate beats up Bianca because she is frustrated that she has more suitors than her. Her lack of support and happiness for her sister is due to the fact that at the time, marriage was a symbol of status. So if Bianca had more suitors, she was more likely to get married sooner, thus improving her status, which makes Kate jealous.
Now that we have a strong understanding of romance in the past, let's take a look at how it is today. Hi, Alexandra. Your button's undone. Whoa!